This evening, let's explore, let's master emotional resilience that we might conquer negative feelings rapidly. Whoops, wrong button. Sorry about that. So let's begin with an overview. We'll begin with an intention before we get down to the nitty-gritty. There is a truth, and here it is. Some emotions are painful, some are pleasurable, and some are neutral. And the pleasurable emotions can feel amazing, but they are not an exoneration. They are not a validation. They don't make us good people. They don't make us Buddhas. Painful emotions can feel mind-numbing. It can feel like Earth is a giant Venus flytrap opening to swallow us whole. But that is not an indictment. It is not a condemnation. It doesn't mean that we are evil or bad or a failure. We are wired to feel the full spectrum of human emotions. From the pleasurable to the painful, from the interesting to the boring, from the glorious to the grotesque. The question is not necessarily what are we feeling. The question is, are we exercising the courage to be vulnerable to the present moment? And once we are, what are we going to do with what we feel? Because I will tell you most certainly that if we rely on self-talk, if we rely on belief, if we rely on the rational emotive approach, if we rely on cognitive behavioral therapy, it is going to bite us in the ass. Our prefrontal cortex is a wonderful hunk of meat, and it does calculations and reasoning extremely well, but it has not evolved to do battle with our emotions. And you can ask an engineer; they'll tell you what happens when you use something for a purpose for which it was not designed. And they will tell you it's going to fail, sometimes spectacularly. And when we over-rely on our prefrontal cortex to deal with our emotions, we invite the symptoms, we invite neurological exhaustion, which can result in the symptoms of depression, which you don't want. I can tell you from first-hand experience, you don't want that. I already covered the not enemies or indictments part. So what is the method? What is the mechanism that we can use to deal with our emotions? And the answer is quite simply, it's not even located in our brain. The mechanisms we use are located in our spinal cord. Together, the fancy term for that is our autonomic nervous system. When we breathe in, whether we know it or not, we are accessing our sympathetic nervous system. Now, contrary to the ravings of fundamentalists, it has nothing to do with active concentration, but it has everything to do with perception, especially perception that is vulnerable, passive, visceral, and random. So you've breathed in, and you've tuned into what you're feeling, whether it's light or heavy or pleasurable or painful or comforting or scary. You've tuned into it. Now what do you do? Well, every organism respirates. And we know from the base of our DNA that if we breathe in, we gotta breathe out. And every time we breathe out, we are wired to access our parasympathetic nervous system. Our parasympathetic nervous system helps us to mentally release as we physically relax. And physical relaxation is what the parasympathetic nervous system is all about. So here is the great irony. We have a 3-pound squishy supercomputer between our ears. And in the millions of years of evolution, we often lose touch with our fundamental wiring in our spinal cord. When we meditate, we are allowing our intention to harmonize or calibrate with our factory installed wiring of our autonomic nervous system. Tonight, if all goes well, we will play with the Buddha's 12 meditations and 4 contemplations. And in so doing, for approximately 32 sets of 16 breaths, we're going to train in noticing and releasing. Now, by the time we're done, we're not going to be Doctor Strange. Sorry, that's not going to be the case. We're not going to look like Benedict Cumberbatch. We're not going to have a goatee and an awesome cape. I know, I've tried, it didn't happen. People are still going to be people to us. Some will be kind, some will be cruel, some will be clever, some will be foolish, some will be wise. We'll still feel the full spectrum of emotions. Then why bother? Because although the emotions will still be present, they will not control our choices. They will not control our utterances. They will not control our deeds. Instead, those things can flow from a place of love's centered spontaneity, which we will intuit with greater and greater ease the more we meditate. I look forward to meditating with you tonight. But first, let's pause for approximately 1.5 minutes of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is brought to you due to the generosity of viewers just like you who help support this channel on Patreon, either by using their smartphone's camera to capture the QR code on the screen, or by scrolling down and clicking the Patreon link in the description area below the video. If you love Star Wars and wish to meditate as transformatively as young Luke Skywalker on Dagobah, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. And I've got good news for you. If at any time during this evening's live stream you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or how to apply them to your life, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window on the right-hand side of the screen. And now, as promised, let's get to our formal practice. Now, although it's a formal practice, you don't need to wear a tux or tails, I assure you. The name of this text is the Secular Mindfulness Meditation and Contemplation. It is an adaptation of the Buddha's oldest meditation manual. And just as a sprint begins with a starter's pistol and ends with a finish line, I like to begin and end each meditation with a very brief, loving chant. Together. May I liberate all beings from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging by relying on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students. May I liberate all beings from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging by relying on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students. May I liberate all beings from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging by relying on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students. These 12 meditations and 4 contemplations divide into 4 sets of 4. We thus begin with Kaya Sati's only set of 4 preliminary meditations that center our bodies. We begin with the first of Centering's 4 physical preliminary practices, where we mindfully notice and even investigate our relaxingly longer, gentle exhalations. As we breathe in, we can silently and mentally recite how. As we exhale, we can silently and mentally recite long. And do remember that these questions are rhetorical. Now we come to the second of Centering's 4 physical preliminary practices, where we mindfully notice and even investigate the coalescence of our invigoratingly sharper inhalations. As silently and mentally we recite the rhetorical question, how as we breathe in, and short as we breathe out. We come to the third of Centering's 4 physical preliminary practices, where we mindfully notice it, even investigate our bodies. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the sensory verb feel. And as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the noun form, which is a synonym for body. Now we come to the fourth of Centering's 4 physical preliminary practices, where we allow our bodies to tranquilly relax. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the noun form. And as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the verb calm. This is not an adjective. This is not an affirmation. We're not trying to convince ourselves that our bodies are calm. This is simply an intention. There's no visualization required, no belief required, no emoting required. It helps to remember that we are silently and mentally reciting the verb calm during each exhalation. And what do we do automatically during our exhalations? We relax. So all we're really doing is aligning our intention with our naturally occurring physiological processes. We continue. So if you've just joined us this evening, welcome aboard. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation or Buddhist philosophy or their application, simply type your question in the chat window on the right-hand side of the screen. And of course, you'll want to type your question in great detail. We continue with Vedana Sati, Seta 4 jhana meditations that center our feelings. We begin with the first of 4 feeling-oriented centering practices, where we savor the first jhana's blissful joy that flows from gently grinning with the corners of our mouth, the apples of our cheeks, and the crow's feet of our eyes, towards our bodies of flesh, blood, and bone. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the verb grin. And as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the noun form. Now, it's not our job to force ourselves to physically smile. If all we do is silently and mentally recite these words, in harmony with our inhalation and our exhalation and our relaxation, we will make progress on the path. Now we come to the second of 4 feeling-oriented centering practices, where we savor the second jhana's peaceful joy. That again flows from gently grinning with the corners of our mouth, the apples of our cheeks, and the crow's feet of our eyes, towards our thoughts, emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining. And so, as you can probably intuit, we're using thought as an umbrella term. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the verb grin. And as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the noun thoughts. We come to the third of 4 feeling-oriented centering practices, where we savor the third jhana's contentment. By mindfully noticing, investigating, and coalescing our thoughts, emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining. Once again, remember, thoughts serves as an umbrella term. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the verb feel. As we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the noun thoughts. Now we come to the fourth of four feeling-oriented centering practices, where we savor the fourth jhana's neutrality by allowing our thoughts, emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining to tranquilly relax. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the noun thoughts. And as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the verb calm. Now remember, every time we inhale, we inadvertently access our sympathetic nervous system, which is already wired to perceive vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. And every time we exhale, we automatically access our parasympathetic nervous system, which is already wired to mentally release as it physically relaxes. We continue with Chittasati's second set of 4 jhana meditations that center our mind. we begin with the first of 4 mind-oriented centering practices, where we savor the 5th jhana's sphere of infinite spaciousness, which is a delightful metaphor, isn't it? We do so by mindfully noticing, investigating, and coalescing our mind's ability to see, hear, feel, taste, smell, and the like. And clearly we're using mind as another umbrella term. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the verb feel. As we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the umbrella term mind. We come to the second of 4 mind-oriented centering practices, where we savor the 6th jhana's sphere of infinite awareness, another delightful metaphor. which we generate by allowing our mind to gladden, as towards it we gently smile from the corners of our mouth, the apples of our cheeks, and the crow's feet of our eyes. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the verb grin, and as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the noun mind, which functions as an umbrella term for our capacity to perceive sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like. Now we come to the third of 4 mind-oriented centering practices, where we savor the 7th jhana's sphere of non-graspability, as we allow our minds, seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, smelling, and the like, to tranquilly relax in the most sustainable way. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the noun mind. As we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the verb calm, remembering that we are already wired to relax during each exhalation. So there's nothing to force. There's nothing to contrive. There's nothing to manufacture. We come to the fourth of four, mind-oriented centering practices, where we savor the eighth jhana sphere of acquiescent non-labeling, as we experience the liberating balance or equanimity of our controlling tendencies to shove at some and reach it up for others. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the noun mind. This time we silently during the exhalation, we silently and mentally recite the verb free, as a magician might free a dove as part of his act. We conclude with Dhammasati, also known as Anika Vipassanas, set of 4 impermanence contemplations to help us circumstantially let go. We begin with the first of 4 contemplations, where we consider course and permanence in the form of rhetorical questions. As silently and mentally we recite, what change? We come to the second of four contemplations, where we consider subtle impermanence. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite what? And as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite fade. We come to the third of four contemplations, where we consider very subtle impermanence with the words, what? Cease. We come to the fourth of four contemplations where we consider relinquishing, surrendering, or letting go. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the preposition how. And as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the verb yield. Remember, these questions are rhetorical. Let's seal this evening's practice by chanting the four immeasurables. May everyone be free from misery. May everyone be happy. May no one be separated from the happiness. May everyone have balance from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging, freed. If you feel that I have earned it, you could type something in the chat window. You could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could share it with a friend. You could even help support this channel in Patreon, either by capturing the QR code on your smartphone's camera or by simply scrolling down and clicking the Patreon link in the description area below the video. In approximately 10 and 2/3 hours, I would very much like to return to lead tomorrow's early morning meditation and lesson. Until then, may you and yours be happy and healthy. And if you are as geeky as me, this is the way.